Thanks so much for joining us today, Gladys and Dolores.
Thank you, Sasha. Hi, everyone. I'm Gladys Gervacio. I am a partner and immigration attorney based out of our Los Angeles office.
Hello, everyone. I'm Dolores Co. I'm an immigration supervisor, also based at our LA office. As Sasha mentioned earlier, we will be discussing immigrant petitions for nurses, what employers need to know to bring in foreign nurses, and what the requirements are for obtaining green cards for them.
And in addition to that, we will also look at what foreign nurses need to know, the requirements, the process. But before we dive into our topic today, just a quick disclaimer that this session does not create an attorney-client relationship and does not constitute legal advice. It's intended purely for informational purposes only. Now that we got that out of the way, I think we're ready to start, Sasha.
Great, thank you both. So to get started, could you give us an overview of the green card or immigrant visa process in general, Dolores?
Well, generally, to sponsor an employee on a green card, an employer must first obtain a prevailing wage determination from the Department of Labor for a job position being offered, and then file the permanent labor certification, or what we call PERM, for them. So if no United States worker, this includes the U.S. citizen and permanent resident, that are available for the offered position, then DOL allows the employer to open up the position for foreign workers. So if the perm is certified by DOL, then the employer files with the I-140, the immigration petition for a foreign worker with the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. After the I-140 is approved, then the prospective employee meets the position-specific requirements. They must then complete the process in the embassy or consulate in their country of domicile, or if they are already here in the U.S., they can complete the process by filing for an adjustment of status still with the USCIS.
Okay, great. Thank you for that overview, Dolores. So how exactly is the immigrant visa process for nurses different, particularly for Filipino nurses? Gladys, could you take this one?
Well, so registered nurses fall under the third preference for employment-based immigrant petitions, or what is popularly called as the EB3 category. So generally, what Dolores discussed is an employer who wishes to file an immigrant petition for a nurse would have to obtain a certified perm from the Department of Labor, and before it can even file the I-140 immigrant petition with USCIS. Now, this certified perm process is a lengthy process that requires recruitment and then trying to prove to the Department of Labor that there are no able, qualified, willing, and available U.S. workers to fill the position. But for EB3 nurses, you don't have to go through this entire process because the U.S. government has already made a determination that there is a shortage of professional nurses here in the U.S. So these occupations or professions where the government has already determined that there is a shortage fall under what is called the Schedule A occupation. So this includes registered nurses, physical therapists, certain individuals with exceptional ability in arts and sciences, including university or college teachers.
Great, thank you for that, Gladys. Does that mean that the immigrant visa process is faster for nurses than for other types of workers?
Well, for those under Schedule A, which the nurses fall under, then yes, it it is relatively faster since, as Gladys mentioned, it skips the whole perm process, which include the recruitment and filing of the permanent labor certification. So, but the employer or the petitioner does need to take several steps before filing the Schedule A, an immigration for this under the Schedule A, and this is the they must also obtain a prevailing wage determination from the U.S. Department of Labor to ensure that the nurses are going to get paid correctly. And then they have to post the notice of filing, which is basically an internal posting of the job opportunity to let the employees at the place of employment of the impending immigrant petition for a certain foreigners. And then after the 30th day of the posting, then the employer can file the I-140 petition. But the employer can pay the extra fee for the premium processing, which cuts down the processing of the I-140 petition to about 15 days. So then after all of this process are done, then the foreigners applies for the immigrant visa at the consulate, at the U.S. consulate or embassy at their country of domicile, or file the adjustment of status here in the U.S.
Great, thank you for that. So what about the numerical quota? Will this delay the issuance of visas?
So Sasha, there is a set number of visas available for each preference category, including EB3, of course. There's a backlog of several years for certain countries such as India and China, but all other countries right now, based on the June and the July visa bulletins, are current for EB3, including the Philippines. Now, when you're looking at the visa bulletins, the date that you want to remember is your priority date, which is the date your immigrant petition is filed. So this is the all-important date that determines your visa availability. Now, we want to make special mention of EB3 versus for the Philippines because in previous years, there was also a significant backlog. But in October 2020, EB3 Philippines became current, and so there are now immigrant visas available to be issued for them, and this is such a welcome development. And of course, more importantly for employers, such as hospitals, and clinics, and nurse registries, they are now able to hire these foreign Filipino nurses without the long wait typically associated with these cases.
Great, thank you, Gladys. Just a reminder to our viewers, if you are joining us live, if you're joining us now, we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. Please be sure to submit any questions that you have into the chat box below for the chance to get them answered live. Also note that this conversation is for informational purposes only and does not create an attorney-client relationship. So Dolores, what are the requirements for an employer to file an immigrant petition for a foreign nurse?
So basically, the documentary requirements for filing of the petition is first the prevailing wage determination from the U.S. Department of Labor, and then it has to be accompanied by the ETA 9089. This is the perm form that we still need to complete and include in the final petition package. The notice of filing, which was posted, job opening notice. This includes the job description, work hours, pay rate, and other required information. Evidence that the employer has the financial ability to pay the certified wage of the prospective employee. So bear in mind that USCIS will look into the financial documents of the employer, such as tax returns, financial documentation to ensure that they can pay the aforesaid a certified wage as determined by the Department of Labor. An employer letter offering the prospective employee of at least the prevailing wage rate, and nursing registration or licensure in the country the degree was received or obtained. So these are the basic documentary requirements that need to accompany the I-140 petition.
Okay, great. Thank you for that overview. So now that we have covered the employer's requirements, I'd like to get a little bit more into the foreign nurses. What does it take for a foreign nurse to qualify for an immigrant visa?
So, Sasha, so to get the employer's I-140 approved, it has to show that the foreigners is qualified for the position. So in order to show this, to show that the foreigners qualifies for the position being offered, the foreigners has to meet one of these three main requirements. First being, which is possessing a CGFNS certificate. So CGFNS stands for Commission on Graduate Foreign Nursing Schools. The second is to pass an NCLEX RN exam. NCLEX, I'm looking at my notes, I want to get this right. National Council Licensure Examination for Registered Nurses. Or third is to have a full and unrestricted license to practice nursing in the state where you intend to work. So those are the main requirements to obtain an I-140 approval. Now, after the I-140 gets approved, the next step is the foreign nurse either applies for the visa immigrant visa at the consulate or embassy abroad, or if already in the US, files an adjustment of status application with USCIS. So in either instance, the foreign nurse would require a VisaScreen certificate.
Okay, thank you. And that kind of brings up a related question that I have. So what exactly is a VisaScreen and when do healthcare workers require it? This question is for you, Dolores.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. So Sasha, the VisaScreen certificate is the healthcare workers credentialing certificate and must be presented to the US Embassy or a consulate prior to issuance of an immigrant visa or to USCIS before they can be approved for the adjustment of status in the US. The certificate is not required at the start of the adjustment application or at the filing of the I-140, but they need to be presented before the final adjudication can happen. So this VisaScreen certificate is solely being given by the Commission on Graduate Foreign Nurses or the CGFNS. This verifies the foreigner's education, training, licensing, and English proficiency, and it's valid for 5 years and will need to be recertified if it expires before the foreigners can immigrate. So the English proficiency can be like a TOEFL or the IELTS, which the foreign nurses can get prior to them being issued a visa certificate, visa screening certificate from the CGFNS.
Okay, great. Thank you for that overview. Now we kind of have an idea of what the requirements are for the nurses, as well as what requirements that employers should keep in mind. But I know a question that is in a lot of employers' minds right now is what is the overall processing time? How long does it take for an employer to actually hire a foreign registered nurse?
So Sasha, it's actually, even foreign nurses want to know this, right? The processing times. So Dolores went over the step-by-step process earlier. Now, currently, getting the prevailing wage determination takes about 6 to 8 months. So it still does take a while for the prevailing wage determination. For the next step, you have the notice of filing or the job posting for 10 consecutive business days. And then the quiet period of 30 days, and then employer proceeds to file the I-140 immigrant petition for foreign worker. So if it's filed under regular processing, it can take about 10 to 12 months for USCIS to make a decision on the I-140. If it's filed under premium processing, then you get a decision within 15 days if no RFP or request for evidence is issued. And then the next step is, of course, getting the immigrant visa at the consulates or the embassy, which we know right now they are significantly delayed with their appointment scheduling, and that's because of the COVID pandemic. So I would say, like, if it's an I-140 is filed under regular processing, then it can take, a year and a half to 2 years plus the scheduling wait time at the consulates. And then if for premium processing, then maybe over a year. And again, you have to consider the visa scheduling availability at the consulates abroad. So so that's basically the processing times right now.
Great, thank you for that. That was really informative. So from the perspective of a foreign nurse, what do they need to know about this process? What are the key points?
So if you're a foreigners looking to work here in the U.S., the first step is to complete your educational and nursing requirements in your home country, like your education and licensure requirements. I mean, in your home country. Most employers, of course, want nurses with experience, particularly in certain areas of specialty, such as critical care, OR, or ER. So you may want to get some experience as well. And then second is to pass the English proficiency test. So certain nurses, foreign nurses are exempt from this if your medium of instruction and your coursework are in English, so you don't have to go through this step. Third one would be to apply for your license in the state where you intend to work. So I think this is the more complex process because each state has its own board of nursing with its own set of rules and own set of requirements. It's such a decentralized process that you have to research which state would allow you to actually take and apply for the NCLEX RN exam. I understand that the most common issue that foreign nurses encounter is the requirement of a social security number, particularly here in California, where you can't even apply for the NCLEX RN exam because they require a social security number, and that's because California's examination and licensing are combined such that when they issue the license, you're already, you'll be able to practice, but for that requirement, they want you to possess a social security number at the time you apply for the NCLEX RN. And then of course you want to pass the NCLEX RN exam or obtain what I mentioned earlier, which is the CGFNS certificate. And lastly, you want to find an employer that will be willing to sponsor your immigrant petition. It could be a hospital, it could be a nurse registry. You may also go through certain recruiting agencies, but make sure that when you go through an agency, you go through the accredited ones. Each foreign country would likely have their own official government agency overseeing, foreign employment. And you want to go through the list of accredited agencies for this process.
Great, thank you for that in-depth overview, Gladys. So just a reminder to everyone that is watching us live, we have some time to take some questions from the audience. So if you haven't already, please submit your questions into the chat box below. And if we have time, we'd be happy to answer those. Also, if you're watching a recorded version, feel free to send us a question to info@chubb.com. So it looks like we have received a question from the audience. I think this one might be good for Dolores. So the viewer asked, could you please summarize the main responsibilities of an employer when filing a green card for a registered nurse?
So to summarize, the employer is required to provide sponsorship by signing the Department of Labor and USCIS forms, post a notice of the job opportunity that is going to be filled by the foreign nurse, submit an I-140 petition to the USCIS on behalf of the foreign nurse, employ and pay the foreign nurse the offer wage that is equal or higher than the prevailing wage that is set by the DOL. So this is basically the requirements for the employer in order for them to obtain green cards for their foreign nurses.
Awesome, thank you. That's really useful information. Thanks for that, Dolores. We also have another question. Another client was asking us, what about those foreign nurses who are currently in the US? Is the process at all easier for them?
I can take that question, Sasha. So if the priority date is current under the visa bulletin, the foreigners may actually apply for I-485, which is the application to adjust or register permanent resident status in the US. I wouldn't say the process is easier, but it has its advantages because even while the I-485 is pending and before USCIS can make a decision on this application, the applicant or foreign nurse is able to obtain an employment authorization document or an EAD, which would already allow him or her to work in the US. So this is the having adjusting status in the US. It's getting the EAD card, which is usually issued within right now about 8 to 10 months from the time you file the application. So comparing this with someone who is currently outside the US, who would have to go through the process of applying for the immigrant visa, first to the NBC and then to the consulates or embassy abroad, and be subjected to the visa appointment scheduling of the posts abroad.
Great, thank you. I have one other question from our attendees. Feel free to submit additional questions if you have any into the comment section below. So this person is wondering, what do foreign nurses do if they want to apply for their license in California? Dolores, could you take this one?
Sure, Sasha. So if they are already licensed and employed in another state, they can apply for licensure by endorsement in California. So let me just read the qualification for endorsement, or what we call reciprocity, into California as a registered nurse. They must hold current and active RN license in another state, U.S. territory or Canada, have completed an educational program meeting all California requirements, and have passed the National Council Licensure Examination, or the NCLEX RN, or the State Board Test Full Examination, the Canadian Bear in mind that a Canadian comprehensive examination is not acceptable for this purpose. If they are applying for licensure by endorsement and have not taken and passed the NCLEX in any state, they need to take the NCLEX examination or in their current state, or they won't be issued a licensure in California. So those are the way. That is the one of their options for the foreign nurses to obtain a license from California.
Great, thank you, Dolores. So it looks like those are all of our questions from the audience for today. So that brings us to the end of our conversation. Thank you so much for joining us today. To stay up to date, please subscribe to and like our YouTube, LinkedIn, and Facebook pages. If you have any questions or suggestions after watching this webinar, please feel free to write us at info@chug.com. Please join us back here next week for more pressing topics that truly matter to you and your business. Until next time, please stay safe. Take care.